Hey, this is Sebastian from socialanxietysolutions.com. Today, I'm interviewing a former client. His name is John Farrar, and he reached out to me a couple of days ago with a beautiful email that I actually read out to you on the podcast or on my YouTube channel. And today, we're actually going to do a little bit of an interview because I wanted to hear more about how he's been doing and so on. And first of all, we've already been chatting for a bit, but welcome and thanks for doing this. It's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
glad to be here.
I'll just launch into my questions. I always like to start off with, how was the social anxiety? How did you experience?
How was it? Well, it was horrible, So, I talked about it in my email, but it was about 2 decades, man, that it's progressive. I said that as well. It started out with some traumatic experiences. I didn't necessarily realize they were as traumatic as they were when I was younger as a kid, but they were.
Mm.
And it built into adulthood. And so,
you started in teens, or
say it one more time.
Started in your teens, I remember.
Yeah, I was in middle school. I can remember getting up in front of the class, probably in like the 6th grade. And so however old I was in the 6th grade, yeah, early teens, 12, 13 years old. And, before these experiences happened, I had, and a lot of people wouldn't have guessed this because at times I could be like the class clown. And, in fact, I overcompensate a lot for my insecurity. It's funny how that works.
Mm.
But I think at that point, the social pressure for myself and really just not knowing who I was, kind of being lost at that point, sparked some situations that were publicly embarrassing. And so and so that kind of kicked off my social unease, and then it progressively got worse. It got worse in high school, although in high school I kind of I'm medicated with alcohol socially, and once again tried to overcompensate and be the fun guy. Meanwhile, I was miserable inside and would come away from a lot of social things exhausted, because it was so much work. It was so much work to try to make sure everybody liked me. So college for me was really bad. And I had a couple of experiences right at the beginning when I was trying to clean my life up. And so I didn't have the substances anymore to try to make myself feel more comfortable socially. And so I had some situations where, and I talked about this in the email, but I was literally speechless. I stood in front of people and I locked up. I had nothing to say.
Frozen.
And coming away from it, I wondered, I didn't even know what happened to me. I'm like, what was that, And what's crazy is that what started happening to me at that point is that I would get myself into a situation, say, I really hope it doesn't happen here. And then it would happen.
Mm.
It's almost like I started manifesting it. And what I didn't realize is I had started gaining beliefs about myself, beliefs about other people, beliefs about the world at a young age. And it had built to a point where I now, every situation I went into, I perceived it a certain way. I perceived myself a certain way. And so it was inevitable that I was going to have a fight or flight reaction. And I would say, I hope it doesn't happen here. And it would happen. And so now I have this web that I've built of like, this place, the grocery store, this certain situation, these certain kind of people. And I have all these places now that before I would go places, I would think about who might I run into here, And, and so yeah, I built this giant web that started closing in on me. And it got to the point where even my closest friends, I would be hanging out with some of my closest friends, and I would just be, screaming inside just of discomfort. And why in the world these people that love me and that care about me and that accept me, why would I feel that way? But you can't change what you believe, and I had all these beliefs and I couldn't change it. So and I tried I tried telling myself I would go into situations and so this is what I'll compare it to. I got a buddy that's scared of flying in airplanes, terrified of flying. And so like 6 months before he gets on an airplane, he's already terrified. He's thinking about it. And then as it grows closer, he starts trying to remind himself, okay, so it's really not that dangerous to fly an airplane. And it's actually more dangerous to drive in the car to the airport than to get on the airplane. And he'll read statistics that, there's so many more things that you could die from to get on an airplane. And guess what? When he gets on the airplane, he is literally in full panic mode. Right. He's sweating. He's gripping on. He can't even hold a conversation with you. He's so terrified. And that's how I got in social situations, is that I could tell myself all day long that these people are on your team. They don't care. Surely this group isn't going to judge you. It's fine. This is all in your head. And I would get there and it would just happen. I couldn't, I was overcome with it.
Yeah.
Until I was able to change my mind when I met you. So.
Yes, it's people often think that they can control it. You're like, control my emotions and find a way to talk myself out of it. But once it gets activated, it is in a split second. It's automatic, outside of your conscious control. And then what we do is like we beat ourselves up about the fact that we're not socializing properly or that we get anxious. It's not like you're doing it on purpose. Yeah. Did you experience any of that, like beating yourself up and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, completely. And I was just, I was, I was crushed as a person. I was disappointed in I was already, I already didn't think much of myself, which was a lot of the problem. But what it does with every encounter is just like, you just feel shame. And, I had already met my wife and was married when I was still dealing with this. And I felt shame that my wife had to see me this way, And I would look back, and you know how you used to do this, but I would replay situations in my head and just be like, I cannot believe I said that, or I cannot believe I did that. Or, when you're sitting there and you have a group of people wondering why, literally sometimes I would sweat so much that my shirt is drenched, my face is drenched. And at that point, you just can't hide it. And it's, man, that's a hard thing for any person to accept about themselves. I was ashamed of it, and I was really ashamed of it.
Yeah, it's a real struggle. And that's also part of why these interviews are important and helpful for people, because maybe you don't know this yet, but like I run a social confidence club now. We have a whole bunch of members, and like what I said earlier, I do group coaching now. And during the group coaching, I say, okay, we have a couple of rules in the social confidence club. Rule number 1, social anxiety is not a secret here. Because typically, in a social situation, you're trying to hide how you're feeling. Most people have never told anyone that they have social anxiety, but inside our club, it's not a secret. So, it's okay to be anxious. We've got the tools to deal with it. It's a very different experience. But yeah, like, it's a secret. You're ashamed about it. And like you said, I felt disappointed in myself. So very common experience. You said you felt shame. How about blushing?
Oh yeah. I mean, and I went through that in the email, but I felt like, do you have to give me every symptom? Like, because I would read on these forums of people that like, I have blushing or I have sweating or my voice trembles or, whatever it is. I have issues breathing. I'm like, I got them all, you know?
Yeah.
And it would come and go. I had this one point where my eyes started twitching, and I'm not sure if people could notice it, but I noticed it. And so I'm like, my eye would be twitching, and oh my gosh, yeah. So it was, I mean, when you're in full panic mode, man, your body does crazy things.
Yeah.
And so what's so crazy is, and I've since explained this to friends, because I mean, how do you explain to somebody what social anxiety is? But essentially I would be trying to hold conversations with people, and I would have the same fear. Let's just say that, I'm in a room, right? And a grizzly bear enters the room, right? And everybody else doesn't notice it and thinks it's fine. But I notice it, and I know that my life is in danger, and so I'm trying to hold this conversation of being normal. But meanwhile, I'm terrified of this thing that I know, you know, my heart's racing. And that's essentially what it was. I sometimes couldn't even hear my own voice because my heart was beating so hard. I'm sweating. All these things are happening. And yet, like, just imagine what it takes to even hold a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It was a struggle, man. So
Yeah. Yeah.
miserable.
And then,
So
and then the unfortunate thing is like people judge their social skills based upon when they feel anxious socially, and they're like, well, I don't have good social skills, or I can't hold a proper conversation, or I get weird socially, or I'm awkward. I'm like, yes, that has a reason. That's the anxiety. Because then I ask him, well, and not everyone has this, because some people don't have even one person that they're comfortable with, but most people do. The majority does, at least. And I'm like, all right, so how about when you're with a close friend, or how about when you're with a particular person that you know? Have you ever been around a particular person that you were comfortable with? Yes, yeah, with my brother, or yes, with my best friend from when I grew up. Okay, well, how do you feel around that person? Yeah, fine. Or yeah, with my partner. Okay, how do you feel around that person? Yeah, fine. Okay. Are you then also worried about running out of things to say? And are you frozen, and do you have difficulty listening to what they're saying? No, right. So there you have access to all of your normal social skills, because, like you said, there's not that grizzly bear in the room. There's not that perception of threat, and so you have access to your normal social skills, and things are just, yeah, there you go.
no, you're right. And the other thing that happens too is that because you're just in overdrive in your brain, here's the other thing. When you become so separated from your social anxiety, and it hasn't been that long for me, it's been 5 years. But as you said, forget about, run out of things to say in a conversation. I used to be terrified of that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was terrified of that. But I also was convinced that I had like a really bad memory. Like I'd be talking to people and I would like forget a word. Like, what is that word? And I can't. And then people would like kind of finish my sentences for me. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. And I mean, it was just the social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sitting in your living room and you're with your best friend hanging out, having a good old time, that stuff doesn't happen to you because you're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable and your brain retrieves that stuff, and it's so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And for some people, by the way, that does happen. They're with their best friend, and but
Well,
yeah,
no, and I also told you that it got to that point,
yeah,
and
right,
when I finally was like, okay, well, when there's no safe place,
right.
maybe with the exception of my wife, but even then, I didn't want her to fully see what a complete failure I was. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Well, you said you tried a bunch of things. What did you try to overcome it?
Well, in my younger years, I saw a psychiatrist and I was put on medication for my anxiety. I was also like diagnosed bipolar 2. You know, of course, this happened in like a matter of like 15 minutes or 10 minutes of seeing a psychiatrist. And I saw different counselors over the years. You know, I to be honest with you, man, I kind of had a short leash with counselors because, I mean, if I'm paying you whatever the going rate was, which ain't cheap, and I'm 5 or 10 sessions in, and I don't feel anything different, and you know, I show up at some social event and I'm exactly the same. Uh, yeah, it's like, so I would stop going. I was like, it's a waste of my money, it's a waste of my time. And then I would go sometimes. I mean, this is a 20-year span. Yeah, so then I would maybe I try to convince myself for a while that if I just didn't think about it, that maybe that was what it was. Like, you know, I'm putting too much into this. And so I would go a year, 6 months and do nothing about it until it got so miserable that I was like, I got to do something about it. Like, I'm so freaking miserable. So, you know, I did a, what was it? I'm not going to say the name of the very well-known CBT workbook that people work through, and there's an online forum, but I did that. And I joined through that in some of the forums. They have some different social anxiety like Skype groups, and I would meet weekly with these people. And you know, some of the people are like willing to show their face on camera. Others don't want to show their face; they just want their voice. And you would work on just like, you know, everybody go around the group and just tell like one thing about themselves, or you know, somebody would ask you a question, you'd have to try to talk for 60 seconds. And it was, you know, just trying to work on being more social. And, but so yeah, psychiatrists, counselors, tailor-made programs for people with social anxiety. And yeah, I mean, I just didn't find any relief, man. I went to my regular family doctor a couple times and was able to talk them into giving me some medications. I did SSRIs. Man, I convinced one doctor to put me on lithium for a while, which is a heavy antidepressant. I almost wrecked my car. And I guess, you know, social anxiety is not as bad when you're a complete zombie, but that also wasn't the answer. So yeah, that's some of the stuff that I tried over the years, man.
And what were the results other than wrecking your car?
Fortunately, I just went up on the curb and I missed a sign, and I didn't actually have a bad accident. But I mean, I literally almost fell asleep on it because it suppresses your system so much. But I mean, just no success, man, and it got worse. You know, and that's what I'm saying. It fear is progressive. It takes over new areas of your life, and it's freaking depressing because you run out of safe places.
Yeah, and you start avoiding and building up more fears in your head, and everything just becomes a disaster. And it's just, you know, your beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies. You find evidence to prove your crappy beliefs, and you know, you got this confirmation bias. Like you believe that people don't like you and that you're bad socially, and you're gonna get rejected. And guess what? Your brain will find the tiniest evidence of that and goes, see, and now it grows stronger, and now it becomes even more of a threat. It's
sorry, I feel like I'm laughing at you a bunch, but I'm laughing along with you because I resonate so much. And you're right. I mean, the smallest little, you know, social thing I would read as maybe I made that person upset, or maybe like, what were they thinking when it seemed like maybe I said something that upset them, or they seemed bothered by me, or, you know, and I'm like, look, I mean, down the road where I am now, it's like, I mean, 99% of the time, people have something else going on in their head. You don't know what kind of day they've had. You don't, you know, but with
Yeah.
social anxiety, you read into everything
Yes.
and
Yes.
you convince yourself.
Hmm. Because social anxiety is for a large part the result of trauma, and because of that trauma, hypersensitive to these little cues. So if part of your trauma was a lot of rejection, you become hypersensitive to that rejection, and your brain is like, "Oh, that could be rejection." God, careful now. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so now, when that's not a problem for you anymore, now you're just reading the situation from the present moment, from a place of maturity, and you don't regress back to that painful, perspective, that child perspective, feeling and seeing the world from that little you. And and so you can just be more rational about things, and like, yeah, well, people have got things going on, they don't know, they might be on their period or whatever the case may be. So yeah, absolutely. All right. So then what happened? I know where this is going, but
Sure. This is where I get to say all these great things about you, right?
yeah, let me
Yeah.
take that.
Uh, yeah. No, I mean, I had a night, like another get together with some friends, close friends. It's like a birthday party. And I remember coming back in the car, me and my wife, and she was like, "Wasn't that so much fun?" And I was like, "I was freaking miserable. I hated it." And she was like, "Really?" I didn't. And I'm like, "Yeah, it's because, you know, you can't always see it." But
Yeah.
I literally the whole time was like, and she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I don't know. I mean, I can't explain this to you, Christina. But my, yeah, I mean, literally, I need to go home and go to bed because I'm exhausted because my body was in like freaking fight or flight mode the whole night." So yeah, I just decided once again, this is what I would do every year. Uh, well, and this time was different. I had decided that, I was just, if a door shut and it didn't help, I was moving on to the next thing. And I told her I'm gonna have to spend some money too. And she wasn't, she wanted to know how much money, but I said, I'm gonna have to spend some money and some of it might not help, and then I'm gonna find something else. But I basically decided that this was gonna be my life goal because this is no way to live. So, if it's the one thing I do, I'm gonna be comfortable in social situations and comfortable with who I am as a person. And so yeah, I kind of became resolved at that point to to actually stick with it. I'm not just gonna, do a few sessions. And so I found a guy right before you that had a website, and I ordered his program. He did some EFT stuff, but he wasn't as engaged. And so I tried to get some coaching sessions. Anyways, then I stumbled across your brilliant and animated YouTube. I think it's still on YouTube. I think I found it on YouTube. But yeah, your little animated video where you explain social anxiety. And you have the little guy that's sitting at a party with his drink or whoever, and his little heart's beating, and that whole video. And it explained to a T. But it also said for the first time that it explained limiting subconscious beliefs and or negative limiting beliefs, whatever that video describes it as. And that the problem is you're just not going about your social anxiety the right way. This is what you have to tackle. And so then I found another video with you telling your story. And, really throughout this whole thing, I wanted to find one person that I was convinced had social anxiety the way that I had it, and that I was also convinced was completely free of it. And so when I watched your video, I was like, okay, because there's certain things, certain ways you describe things, even just in this conversation, the nuances that me and you are describing, that unless you've had it, you don't know these things about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was like, all right, I'm in. I got to get a hold of this guy. And that's kind of what started our sessions together. I started the social confidence system. Is that what you called it back then?
Yeah, that's not available anymore, by the way.
Okay.
Nor our
Well,
blog for sessions, but yeah, okay.
yeah. Well, I started that and doing that stuff and working through that stuff on my own. And then, yeah, I signed up, I think, for 3 coaching sessions with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when everything changed, man.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And did you have any doubts about it working?
Of course I did. I mean, yeah, I did, and that's also kind of the beauty with a lot of the modalities and things that you use is that, this isn't like a some sort of placebo effect. Like, you don't have to believe that it's going to work. And so, yeah, of course I you know,
Because people don't believe typically in tapping or other modalities, because it's so,
well, it's
yeah.
weird. And at this point, when you're paying a guy for sessions and yeah, I mean, dedicating yourself to some program, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when nothing else has worked, why should this work?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Right.
I had some hope that you're sitting here saying I had it and I was convinced you had it. But then there was all these things in my head like, but maybe he's just different than me, or maybe this was a unique experience for him. And, and then in the back of my mind, I thought, yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't have it like I had it. It was because it's almost too good to be true.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
no, I
some
didn't
people, go ahead, sorry.
think it's gonna work.
Right. And some people then they have very similar thoughts and they let those thoughts talk themselves out of taking action. Because if you convince yourself that you cannot overcome something, then how much action are you going to take? Very little to none. And the kind of action that you take is very non-committed. You said earlier, I was committed. That's also an important part of it. You're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to keep going. This is going to be my life goal now, to be comfortable here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Well, I should probably say this though. I mean, I told you earlier that I had therapists and, I had a short leash. And
mm-hmm.
so I was committed to overcoming it. I wasn't committed to you. And I'm just being honest.
Sure.
I had you on a short leash, dude. And I was gonna give this, like I said, I bought 3 sessions. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, let's see what you got, and if I feel no difference, then on to the next thing. So I wasn't
Right.
gonna give up, but I was gonna give up on you.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right. Yeah. Um, and what I probably did, because I did intro chats, it's like I said, well, 3 sessions, you're going to experience a change, and
yeah.
that's the beauty of these techniques. Well, you might not resolve your social. It's unlikely to resolve your social anxiety in 3 sessions, though it's possible and it's happened. And I've got video testimonials of people who have done that. But it's less commonly the rule. But when you experience actual changes and you feel different in your body and you feel things shifting, and then it becomes a different story. And then I can say, all right, well, you want to get rid of the rest of it too. Yeah. And what was your experience during the sessions?
Hmm. I'm trying to think if it was session 2 or session 3, but yeah, I felt something that, and the tapping calmed me. And at that time, you'd done something called Psych K with me. And I knew after like session 1 and 2, it felt a little different. But then something happened to me, and it was either session 2 or session 3. Something happened to me, and I've never felt this experience before, and I never felt it after again. But I felt something, and it was when we were trying to get at one of these limiting beliefs that I had, and it was a powerful one. It was, and it's funny is I went and looked in my phone, because when we would work on a belief, I would add it to the list. And I had like a list of like 15, maybe 16, 17 beliefs that I could say, okay, this is all the stuff I've changed. And I tried to find that. And of course, I've changed phones and I can't find that. But it was something about fully accepting and loving myself as a person. It was in that range, one of those. And I remember sitting there, and in this technique, you're saying this thing to yourself over and over again. And it got to the point where, and this was actually the first time we'd done this together. We had done some tapping, we'd done a few other things. We hadn't done this. And I was saying it to myself. And at this point, you repeat it, you repeat it, you repeat it. I'd maybe said it 200, 300 times. I don't know. It'd been a long time. And I was thinking, all right, it's about time that we go on to the next thing. And I kind of thought, yeah, whatever we're doing here, this ain't for me. And then something moved, and this is going to sound crazy, and I'm not, I'm not one to, embellish or get weird or hokey or spiritual, but I felt like some weird energy, some shift that occurred, and it started in my chest and it moved up through and out of my head. And I remember I opened my eyes, and then of course, when you open your eyes, you're supposed to there's something you do at the end once I open my eyes. And I was already ready to talk to you because I wanted to ask you, what the heck was that? And so I sat there for a second, and then, I think that's what I told you. I said, hey, I just felt something. Is this normal? And I think you'd said that sometimes people feel that. And it was a crazy deal because it was just something I'd never experienced before. I knew something had just occurred physically in my body. So yeah, that was a powerful experience. And then I think I was like, I signed up for like 7 more,
Mm-hmm.
7 more sessions. But and then over the course of those, so I did 10 sessions with you. I just felt like a different person, and it was an amazing thing. And I said this to you before we started the interview, that I feel like every year things get better, and so I think if I can really quick, just to kind of explain how I feel like I had these beliefs at the core of who I was. And then I had built all these experiences on top of that, and then in an instant, I had taken this belief out, and I had started a new column with a new belief, but I didn't really have any experiences with these new beliefs. And so, over the course of 10 sessions, 2 or 3 months, I developed all these new beliefs about myself, but then I had to go out in the world and prove to myself that this stuff was true. And it's not like I had to go out and work for it, but I had to go to the big social event and realize I am different. And I remember how before when I told you that I would say to myself, I wonder if social anxiety will happen here, and then it would happen. Mm-hmm. Well, kind of like that, but I would go to this different place and say, okay, well, I was comfortable here. I wonder if I'll be comfortable here. Oh my gosh, I'm comfortable here. well, I wonder if when I run into this guy that I'm always anxious around, if I'm comfortable with this guy. And then I start building these experiences, just like I built with social anxiety, that are reinforcing these new beliefs. And so now, 5 years in, I mean, I have a mound of experiences that tell me I'm a different person. And
Yep.
it's a beautiful thing, man. I told you in the email, I think was it last weekend or 2 weeks ago? At my father's memorial service, I spoke in front of like 1,200 people. And there was like 4,000 people live streaming this thing. And, yeah, I mean, I did fine, I'm no Tony Robbins, but, or like some professional speaker, but, I've now built 5 years of going into a situation now and just being like, I'll be fine. And I'll be fine because I'm just going to be myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and that's good enough, and it's fine, and it's safe to do that. So that's what your programming is currently saying. And before, your programming was saying, it's not okay to be you, it's not safe to be you, you should be someone else, and it's not good enough, and so on. And so basically what's happened is you've upgraded your system, or rather, because you haven't, I don't want to say upgrade, because that sounds very self-improvement-y, but it's rather, we took out the crap programming, and so that allowed you to be your true, natural, authentic self. And I just shed a little bit of light about what you shared in terms of your experience. So when I work with clients, I specialize in a couple of techniques. I talk about tapping the most because tapping is most well known. But I use other modalities as well that fall under the umbrella of energy psychology. And we want to have the best of traditional psychology as well as energy psychology and combine it so you have a holistic approach, and you're not just using cognitive approaches. You're also using these powerful energy psychology techniques in order to shift your emotions and actually get rid of these emotionalized thoughts, beliefs, and shift and change them around. It's incredible what can happen. But under that umbrella of energy psychology, there are various techniques. Tapping is one of them. Intention-based energy process, which I've been using in the past 4 years, which I told you, is another one of them. Amazing. It's now my favorite, by Steve Wells, psychologist. Go check it out. And then there's also Psyche, which is spectacular. Emotion code has been very powerful. Logosynthesis is powerful. TAT is powerful. And so there are all these various techniques that are incredibly efficient and effective ways of shifting stuck negative emotions, processing trauma, and neutralizing negative limiting beliefs. And what John was describing was that I guided him through a Psyche exercise, which is where you actually install a positive belief directly into your subconscious mind. And you sit in a particular pose, which is determined by muscle testing and a bunch of questions. And then while you sit in that particular pose, you have your eyes closed, and internally you repeat a particular affirmation, which is also determined by muscle testing. And then eventually the resistance to that affirmation shifts. If you're familiar with normal affirmations, you are told to say them out loud, to say them over and over, to say them in the mirror, to say them with conviction, say it like you mean it, say it over and over. And that works a little bit when you're in the comfort of your own home and you're not in a social situation, but you walk outside, you get triggered all over again, and it's
yeah,
adds some crap on the top. typically. That's been my experience. And I still do affirmations, but more like to focus myself. Not necessarily to change deeply held subconscious beliefs. But with Psych-8, you do shift and change that. And, all of these modalities are really amazing. And, what happens is bit by bit, step by step, you're actually shifting and changing the internal programming that you've got as a result of the developmental trauma, the repetitive negative experiences from early childhood, and other traumatic experiences that you've gotten. And you just get a new program in, and then you start to gather new positive reference experiences. And now, instead of a negative cycle with the anxiety getting linked to more and more situations, your life shrinking and shrinking, avoiding more and more, getting more and more miserable, you start developing a different kind of direction in your life, and you start gathering the evidence of things going well. And now you've got a positive feedback cycle, and you can actually get out of this challenge. But it's not as glorious and as easy as it might sound, because it's also different people, different experiences. Yeah, John, it was a period of 3 months, and that's one-on-one coaching for 10 sessions. Other people, it's a much longer period, and it's much more gradual. And it's also not just like new reference experience feeling better, new reference experience feeling better. Oh, am I going to feel better here? Hey, I do. No, it's like, am I going to feel better here? Yeah, a bit better, but I still have something to work on, and this and that and that. So I want to be very clear about not the experience is not the same for everyone, but when you start applying these techniques in the right way, real powerful change starts to happen. Progress will begin to happen, and it will be a bit of an up and down journey, but you bit by bit start going in a different direction, and that progress, that feels really good, because now you're not going downhill anymore. Life is not going downhill anymore. No, you're starting to build something up that feels empowering. And you mentioned Tony Robbins earlier. Tony Robbins says progress equals happiness. And that's not the only thing that makes people happy, but that is something that makes you happy, because you're like, I feel a little bit better here. I don't feel so anxious here. Hey, I'm comfortable here now. Hey, I don't beat myself up so much. These little changes all start to add up, bit by bit, step by step, slowly but surely. Yeah, you're starting to get out of that dark hole, and you start to build a whole, positive life for yourself. So,
Sure.
yeah, great.
Well, and I think too that, I'm glad you said that, because with this interview, I feel like I have to kind of give a condensed version too of what, but yeah, 2 or 3 months that changed my life. But it's also, going back and thinking about like public speaking, for example, which was, if I'm scared of just being in a conversation with people, public speaking is like the worst possible scenario. All eyes on you. My greatest life fear, honestly, my greatest fear. And so coming out of your coaching sessions, I got involved in Toastmasters, which is a public speaking club. And it's not like I got in this club and was like, I'm a different person, I'm a great speaker. No, I wasn't a great speaker. So, I didn't have the skills of speaking. But what it allowed me to do is get up in front of people. And here's the other thing you have to be honest about is, people that don't have social anxiety, they also feel nervous sometimes.
Absolutely.
That's a normal human thing. And so I got up to public speak and I felt nervous, but I wasn't overwhelmed. And so it wasn't this overwhelming thing that took over my whole body. So I was nervous, like anybody would be nervous. And I stuck with it. And I ended up doing a bunch of speaking. And so, yeah, that, like many other things over the last 5 years, it's a progression. So 3 months changed my life, but it's to be fair, it's also a process of putting in the work over time. And like you said, it's an upward trajectory. And that's the beautiful thing, is it just keeps, it gets better.
It gets better and it gets better and it gets better and it gets better.
And
That's
so
the good stuff.
Put me now to where I'm, about to finish a graduate. I got into a counseling program. So I have a completely different career. I'm a full-time fireman, but yeah, this has ignited a passion in me to help people. And that's going to kind of be my next chapter in life. But yeah, I'm finishing a graduate program in counseling at a university here. And I'm going to do that with my life. But it's allowed me to do things and challenge myself. And, and it's like, man, I'm pumped to see where it goes. So, anyways.
Amazing. And thank you for pointing that out, by the way, about, other people that don't consider themselves to have a social anxiety disorder also experience nervousness and tension and anxiety. I teach, maybe I did that back then already, I don't know, but I've really made it very succinct now. I teach 3 things. There are 3 keys to overcoming social anxiety. 1, overcoming the resistance. 2, working through the triggers, the things that actually activate the anxiety. And 3 is acceptance. So accepting yourself, accepting your emotion, accepting your situation, and so on. And part of that acceptance is also accepting that sometimes you're going to feel some uncomfortable feelings. You're going to feel some uncomfortable emotions. It's part of life. It's also part of life of people who don't have social anxiety disorder, And the vast majority of people that I meet have some bit of social anxiety. I'd say it's more than 80% of people that I meet have some social anxiety in some situations. But the big difference between them and people with more severe social anxiety is that they don't judge themselves so harshly for it. And it's also a lot easier, of course, because they just have a bit of it in some situation. It hasn't overtaken their life. Let's be very clear about that. But that is the difference. And so they just get the experience. They're like, oh yeah, I feel a bit awkward and uncomfortable in that situation. And then it goes, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, it's just, it's normal. They're used to it. It's not a big deal to them. And it doesn't go away either, typically, unless, some people, when they get really old, it might go away, but, it's a different experience for them. Yeah.
Well,
but
and there's not, for those people too, there's not a massive incentive to do much about it because it affects them very little, So it's like, I get this every once in a while. But yeah, they're not like, me or you or a lot of people with social anxiety, severe social anxiety, that there's this massive incentive because it's ruining your life. So
right, exactly. But they they do know what it is, they do experience it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned well, things are a lot better now. How is it now socially?
Yeah, it's funny because we freeze up there for a second.
Yeah. Let me say it again.
How's it now?
So, yeah. So how's it now socially?
Yeah. It's good, and here's the thing. I think that when you lose and here's something else I didn't realize about myself with social anxiety, is that the reason that there was so much pressure socially is because I needed other people's approval very badly, and I was not loving and accepting of myself down deep. And so I really needed other people to like me, because I couldn't stand it if I failed somebody or if somebody didn't like me, because, at that time in my life, it was a make or break thing for me. I needed you to like me. And yeah, once I got comfortable with myself, I just don't feel that anymore. And, even tonight with this interview, I got like 3 hours of sleep last night, and then my wife worked today. I have two little kids. And so approaching this thing earlier, I was telling my wife, I'm like, tired, man, you know? And I don't know if my brain's firing on all cylinders, but uh, you know what? It's okay. Like I don't need to give like the best performance possible for Seb's channel to try to honestly, man, like I'm just being me, and um and that's good enough. So yeah, so socially I have nights, man, like, or I don't want to talk to people. And that's normal, it's like, eh. And so I can now sit in a room in conversation or watch other people have conversation and not say much and be okay with it. And uh it's really an amazing thing to sometimes just sit in silence and and not feel like you have to say something, not feel like, oh my gosh, like we were saying earlier, what if I have nothing to say in conversation? Well, sometimes I don't have much to say, and that's also normal. I
Yeah.
work 50 hours a week and I'm tired. I have two kids. So, and most people understand that. And then you start realizing that other people are that way too. And I don't have those expectations of other people. I don't expect you to be like, on your A game every time you come over to my house. Like, chill out. I know you're tired. This is life. And so I have nights where I'm excited socially and loving it, and other nights where I want my wife to cancel dinner plans. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be quiet, John, tonight. And that's okay. But what and this is something else I want to say. I almost forgot to say this, but I hit this point when I was doing a couple of years in really well with my social, so well with my social anxiety that it wasn't really a thing anymore. It wasn't this massive thing in my life. And I, I kind of like didn't know what to do with myself for a little while. And I've always been this driven person. And, you know, I don't know. I'm not lazy and I don't sit around, and I feel like there's something's always happening with me. And so I was telling my wife that I felt like I was like, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was like, I felt like I had lost motivation in life. And so I started, she's like, well, explain it to me. And I'm like, well, this is kind of how I feel. And after I got done explaining it to her, she goes, you know what they call that? I go, what? She goes, contentment. And I was like, okay. And she goes, you're just content, John. You're okay. It's okay. Like, take the moment in, enjoy just being a dad and your family. And, but for so long, what drove me was I can't fail at anything. I cannot fail. People cannot see me fail. And then socially, not just at work and production, but socially, I can't fail. And these things drove me. And once it was gone, I I didn't know what contentment felt like. And so she's like, motivation will come again. Just enjoy this time in life. And so I was kind of like, I'd sit in my house and drink coffee, and maybe I'll watch a show today. And, I'm not carrying this burden anymore. And so it's been good. And of course, she was right. Motivation would come again, and it has. And so, but it's for the right reasons. And you know what I'm saying? And so,
Yeah.
if I could describe where I'm at socially in one word, I would just say content, man. You know?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You got a good one.
And what, my wife?
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
and, props to her, because you know, she's never really dealt with it, and she's loved me through it. And that's a hard thing. It's like this and she never fully got it. People can't get it if they're
Yeah.
not, but she supported me. And so, yeah, I love her for it.
That's lovely. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Any last words?
I don't know. I've said a lot, man. you know, I don't know if I have any great parting words, but if anything, I mean, I think hope's a great thing. And so if there's somebody that stumbles across this interview, man, what I want to say is this: I felt despair. I felt complete loss of hope in life. And I said in the email that worst case scenario in my life, how I thought I would end up with the social anxiety stuff is, and I never told anybody this, quietly in the back of my mind, I wondered if it was possible that I might take my life one day. I wasn't sure, I wasn't suicidal necessarily, but I wondered if with the years of exhaustion and embarrassment and, just, I guess, just the chipping away of my pride of who I was as a person, just like, because it's so exhausting, man. Like, I wondered if I would just give up one day and just be like, I want relief. It's not worth it. So that was worst case scenario. I kind of thought best case scenario for myself. I saw myself, I have two boys, 8 and 5. And I saw myself, having embarrassing moments, as an older man with them. And, thinking about, well, if what happens when they get married at their wedding, they want me to talk, or like, and they're just going to learn as they grow up that dad can't do certain things, and they won't respect me in that way. And that's okay. They'll still love me, but they'll know that, dad just has a lot of problems in this area and we can't ask him to do too much, or, and probably even, like, I'm sure, try to structure things where dad doesn't have to be at social things, because they understand, like, man, dad just, this part really owns him. And so that was like best case scenario for me. But man, can you imagine that? That's best case scenario. That, my wife and my kids, like, they would love me to death, but I mean, they would see me as this, like, honestly, who I really was, and this person that saw everybody else is here. Everybody else was here. Everybody else was doing this in life, and I was always here. And so, yeah, parting words. I just want to say this is that you may have tried so many things like I had, but maybe you haven't tried this. And I'm telling you, I had this thing and I'm different now. And no matter where you are on this process of healing, there's some people that are going to watch this that have had success with you. And maybe they're, they've chipped away at a lot of it, but they still have some of it. No matter where you are on that spectrum, it's worth it. It's so freaking worth it, because you're going to hit a place and you're going to do, like I said in the email, Seb, you're going to have to one day sit down and really reflect and be like, wow, I can't believe I thought that way. I can't believe life was that way. I have to remind myself of how I used to be. And then ultimately what you're going to find is you're going to find peace and self-acceptance. What a beautiful thing. So I hope somebody can find hope in this, because there's hope and there are answers. This, there's answers. So.
Well, I'm glad I asked you for any last words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell this thing affected my life just a little bit?
Yeah, tiny bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. And you know what? I spoke with my coach yesterday, and I said, listen to the email that I got from a former client yesterday, and I read out what you wrote me, and at the point where I said, and now I'm 5 lessons short of my counseling degree. She's like, oh, I'm like, yeah. So, there's that's a different kind of transformation. It's not just that you've got yourself to a point where this is no longer an issue and you've liberated yourself. Now there's a different kind of motivation and a drive within you to start helping other people, and that's really cool. So I was very pleased to hear that. So you don't have your degree yet. You're not,
Close.
not trained and that kind of stuff. What's your plan with that then? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I stack internships with my last 3 classes, 3 semesters, so like year and a half.
Mm.
So, but once again, man, it's like I got 2 small children. My wife works. I got a full-time job. I have a whole nother career. So, best case scenario, I think about a year and a half, and I'll be completely done. Cool. And yeah, and then I'll be blessed by the state to, they'll say it's okay that I can start, doing this with people, but I mean, honestly, even before that's done, I think I'm already trying to, with this stuff I've already learned, start gaining knowledge ahead of time, start working with people ahead of time. I got a passion for it, man. I do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you have a website or something like that, or you want me? Do you want to?
No. I got nothing, man. And I'm off all social media, just cause, man, it got crazy, and I felt like it was just like a waste of my time. But yeah, I'll let you know. I'm going to start up some social media stuff, and this is the infancy stages of me starting to work with people. But yeah,
right. Yeah. Full-time fireman and 2 kids. That sounds like quite a busy life. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, John, thanks so much, man. This was great. It's really going to inspire a lot of people. So thank you very much. This was great.
Yeah, it was great. Appreciate it, man.
Awesome. All right. I hope this interview inspired you and that it gave you some hope that you can truly overcome this, because you can truly overcome this problem. Now, if you're serious about overcoming your social anxiety, there's a very interesting opportunity, because normally I don't do any one-on-one work anymore because I don't have the time for it, because I'm running the Social Confidence Club. But things are running smoothly, and up until the time that the new club opens, which is going to be in February of next year, I've got some time for a handful of private clients. If you are interested in that, I've got 2 or 3 spots left for 3-month intensives of private coaching clients. That's one-on-one work with yours truly. Now, if you're interested in that, you can send an email to socialanxietysolutions@gmail.com. That is socialanxietysolutions@gmail.com. All right, have a great week. Wish you all the best. Talk to you very soon. Bye for now.